In this story, I'm going to tell you how I sent a bouquet called Truth in Bloom to a house party to expose my cheating boyfriend, but not to shame him. I did it to make him feel the truth, and the fallout quietly remade my life and our whole town. My name is Evelyn Hart. I am 34 and I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and this is where my life quietly unfolded until a friendship and a betrayal tore a hole through it. I run a small floral studio tucked between a yoga studio and a tap room, and I love arranging flowers because it is the kind of work that rewards patience and careful hands. Petals listen when you coax them into place. Stems reply when you cut them at the right angle. I keep my life tidy on purpose. I like my plants watered on time, my books shelved by color, and my relationships uncomplicated. Order is a kind of kindness I give myself. It makes the noise of the world manageable. I had been seeing Jonah for almost a year, casual at first, then ordinary and sweet enough to make me stop being so careful about letting someone in. He was funny in that dry, late night way. He liked my dumb indie playlists, and he came to my opening nights and pretended to love every single bouquet I made even when I was sure he did not. He moved through our small town like someone who belonged everywhere. He knew the bartenders, the gallery owners, the woman who ran the farmer's market stand. Our social group was small and noisy, the kind where rumors ricocheted around the bar and came home before midnight. That comfort made me careless. I started to trust him the way I trust the old oak in my neighbor's yard, because it was always there, because it had stood through storms and still held its shape. The problem started the week after my 34th birthday, but the crack had begun months before. Jonah began canceling last minute, arriving late to my studio with excuses about work, about traffic, about caring for his elderly cat. He became vague about plans. Small things, his phone face down at brunch, a change in the way he angled his head when my name came up in conversation, a flinch I couldn't place. I told myself I was overthinking. I arranged extra buckets of water and taught myself to breathe through the small betrayals. Then Sarah, a friend I trusted like I trust my morning coffee, pulled me aside after a late night show and said, calmly and with a sadness I had never seen on her face, that she had pictures on her phone of Jonah and another woman kissing at a party. They were not just kissing. My heart didn't do a slow fall. It slammed. I felt the floor under me give way. I wanted to stand and shout at the party, to break glasses and break his jaw and tear open our carefully folded life, but Sarah was quiet. She showed me the photo and then she left me with it. The image on the screen was small and terrible, Jonah's profile leaning in, the other woman laughing around his mouth. In the background, lights smeared like indifferent stars. When I confronted Jonah, he laughed at first, then told me it had happened once. A stupid mistake at a crowded bar, an accident. He said the word mistake like someone assigning blame to gravity. I wanted to believe him for the old reasons, because he had been kind in that small, ordinary way, because it hurt more to not believe. But the photo was not the only thing. A mutual friend later told me he had seen Jonah with the same woman 2 other times, and their tone suggested it was more than a mistake. My world was not only shaken, it was rearranged into a place where the people I trusted might be people who lied to me. I felt small and private and suddenly exposed, and the anger I had carefully tucked away for other things swelled into a fierceness I did not recognize. I spent a night awake in the studio, the fluorescent hum like a distant tide, hands cramping from trimming roses I could not sell. I realized then that my tidy life had never been accidental. It had been a series of small decisions meant to protect me. Jonah's actions had not only breached a promise, they had thrown open a door and let every draft in. I could pretend to sweep the floor and shut the door, but the truth had been seen, and once something has been seen, it insists on being accounted for. At first, I tried the things people tell you to do. I talked to friends, I packed away his sweaters, I told myself I would not make scenes. I wanted to solve the problem with quiet dignity, but each attempt made me feel further off balance. I asked Jonah for the truth, and he doubled down on the one time story, then said his behavior was his problem and he would change. He apologized, he left bouquets at my doorstep. He sent those clumsy, earnest texts men send when they want to be forgiven. I wanted to forgive him so badly it hurt, but every time I listened, more whispers arrived. Friends I had not suspected said things in private. The woman was someone Jonah dated for a summer. She had a habit of turning up at the same events. People started looking at me differently, like I was part of the gossip feed I had never wanted to be in. I tried to block him on social media and then unblocked him, and that small act felt like peeling at scabs. I tried to tell myself this was a chance to be the better person, to stay calm. The problem was that Jonah's lies had consequences beyond the occasional ache of betrayal. He began to show up at places I worked events, standing too close so that when someone asked about us, he could smile and redirect. He told a mutual colleague that we were on a break, which made my friend group awkward around me, as if my private life was suddenly a right everyone had to opine about. Every solution I attempted, walking away, confronting him once and for all, telling myself the truth did not matter as long as I felt whole, made the situation worse. My little studio, once a refuge, now felt like a stage where I had to perform composure while my heart bled out in private. The more I tried to be decent about it, the more Jonah took advantage. He assumed my silence meant weakness. He assumed my privacy meant I would not fight back. One night at a community fundraiser, he took a photo with that same woman and posted it to his story with a caption about double trouble, and friends sent me screenshots with a kind of awkward caution. That should have been the last straw that made me walk away, but what pushed me lowest was something else. A client, a woman I had known for years, pulled me aside and told me she had seen Jonah and the woman leaving my favorite speakeasy late one week. She did not mean to hurt me by telling me. She said it because she thought I deserved the chance to know. Her voice was soft, but I heard the finality in it. After that, the world narrowed to the image of them together and to Jonah's repeated denials. I cried in the stockroom in a heap next to buckets of ribbon and felt ridiculous. I told myself I would not stoop to revenge. I told myself I was better than him and his petty betrayals. But at night I rehearsed what I might do if I could not stand the unfairness any longer, and the rehearsals became plans. I lay awake picturing small, precise scenes, Jonah's laugh catching when someone handed him a card, his face when a truth landed in a room like a stone. The plans were not flames, they were drafts of control. I pictured writing a note and slipping it somewhere private, or arranging a bouquet that said everything I couldn't. I thought about the way bouquets communicate, how color and shape can be blunt and also elegiac. I told myself any action would be measured, like pruning a sick branch, not burning the whole tree. The steady, domestic logic of revenge was strangely comforting. It let me be clever instead of frantic. It let me imagine endings that began with me reclaiming the small, visible parts of my life. Who I trusted, when I showed up, what stories I allowed to be told in my name. The rehearsals stopped feeling like fantasies and started feeling like permissions. As the weeks slid into months, I let the plan form slowly and carefully so it would not look like desperation. I have always been a planner. I arranged staggered deliveries. I timed flower restorations to save money. Revenge, I told myself, would be the same careful work. I wanted him to feel what I felt, to know that he had been seen, to be embarrassed in the way he thought he never would be, to taste the consequence of treating someone's trust like yesterday's trash. I also wanted to make sure I would not do something I would regret. I thought about confronting him publicly with proof and letting him scramble. I thought of spreading the pictures, but that made me feel lower than him. The thing that made sense to me was to reclaim my power quietly and memorably, to create a poetic consequence more about truth and less about humiliation. The trigger came on a Friday when I found out Jonah had invited the woman to a small house party at a friend's place on Saturday. It would be a crowded place of thin walls, a place where secrets tended to leak out because people were drunk and young and talkative. I knew two things. Jonah liked to be admired, and he liked the sensation of performing. He would not resist the chance to put on a show for people who meant something to him. I also knew I had a small advantage. I work late shifts sometimes, and the studio sleeps in the back room. That night, I stayed up arranging a bouquet that I would call Truth in Bloom, the colors stiff and shocking. White lilies for truth, black calla that read like quiet grief, and a single red anthurium shaped like a heart gone sharp. I ordered it to be delivered to the party with a note that read, simply and without flourish, I know. Delivery would place it in a visible spot near the entrance where someone would take a photo of it and post it, because people do that now. I arranged for a trusted friend to be at the party as an extra pair of eyes. I did not want to hurt the other woman beyond seeing she had been seen. My vengeance was against dishonesty, not women. I rationalized every step so it would not feel like cruelty. On the morning of the party, I received a text from Jonah, insincere or earnest, I could not be sure, asking if I would come. I said I had a shift, I did not go. My friend later told me Jonah put the bouquet in the middle of the living room like it was a bad joke, and someone in the group posted a picture of the arrangement with the caption, "Oh wow, drama in flowers," and tagged Jonah. When he saw the message thread that the bouquet had arrived, his smile flickered. He asked who had sent it, and people around him shrugged. He did not suspect me. Then, 2 hours later, my friend texted a photo of a screenshot of Jonah's private reply to a mutual friend, a message typed with the same calm that had once lulled me. I wish this would blow over. He was twitchy and more protective of his phone than usual, and that night he left the party early to check on his cat. He was shrinking away from attention instead of soaking it up. That was the taste of success. But revenge is rarely tidy, and the universe seemed determined to complicate things. The woman Jonah had been seeing messaged other mutual friends with indignation and played the hurt card, and suddenly the group was split. People took sides. Jonah framed me as petty online. He made up a story that the bouquet was a joke between him and the woman, that I was reading things into nothing. It worked for a while. I watched him win sympathy in the group chat, and for a day I felt the old, familiar, sickening slide of regret. I had hoped that the truth would land like a bell and ring through everyone's ears and set everything right, but instead it made the circle gossip further and drew in people who liked chaos. I called my plan 100 names and wanted to drown it in the sink with the dead stems. The lowest point was when a mutual friend, the one I once trusted to be impartial, blocked me and called me dramatic. That single act made my chest cave in like an old book. I had wanted justice, not to lose the few people who had been kind to me. For a few days, I wanted to throw the whole scheme away and go back to being small and private, to the uneven comfort of my routine. Then I remembered how people had felt when they trusted me, safe, seen, and respected. I wanted that for myself again. If I was willing to fight to protect a bouquet of delicate things, I could fight to protect my own dignity. So I pulled my plan back together and went to the thing I do best: tell a story with my hands. I started sending small, personal notes to people I knew in the group, not to gossip or shame, but to remind them of how quietly harmful lies could be. I wrote about the way light looks on lilies when someone tells the truth, the ordinary dignity of naming what happened. I did not call Jonah out in public. I sent messages that read like invitations back to decency. Some people ignored me, some thanked me, and a few apologized for their role in spreading rumor. It was not the roaring finish I had imagined, but it was steadier and more honest, and that steadiness gave me the courage to make the final move I had been planning. The final move was not cinematic in the way I thought revenge should be. There were no dramatic confrontations at the town square, no viral videos, no shouting matches. Instead, I did three things that together felt like the closure I needed, each chosen like a stem in an arrangement: deliberate, balanced, and honest. First, I arranged for Jonah to receive a bouquet at his apartment the next week, but it was not one to be posted about. It was small, delivered without fanfare. A tight bundle of white carnations with a single card that read, plainly, "I do not want crumbs of your truth." I had the courier leave it with his doorman. I wanted him to see the words when he opened the door alone, not in front of people who might clap him back into good standing. I imagined him unwrapping it in his hands, feeling the weight of the line, the way a short sentence can sound like a mirror thrown at your face. It was not meant to humiliate him publicly. It was meant to remove the comfort of plausible deniability and to bring the consequence into his quiet space. Second, I rearranged my life publicly. I started teaching a weekday flower arranging class at a community center, something I had been postponing because of fear that my schedule would not allow it. I announced it on my social page with a short note about learning and healing through making. That note mattered more than I expected. People who had watched the drama from a distance began showing up. The first week, a woman I'd never spoken to stayed after class and told me she defollowed my studio because my arrangements made her apartment feel like a home. She had been afraid to come because she didn't want to interrupt my grief. Another student brought her teenage daughter, and they left laughing about the ridiculous names we gave to flowers. Students came who had never spoken with me before, and those small interactions became a new way to be seen by the community instead of by gossip. The classroom, with its scissor scratch and the smell of damp soil, became a place where I could rebuild a version of myself that felt intact. Jonah's messages became small and defensive, and he tried once to come to the studio to be charming, but I was busy teaching. He stood outside looking uncertain and then walked away. The third move was the one I had feared most because it was raw and had real consequences. I asked Sarah for the original pictures she had shown me and uploaded them to a private folder with a short explanatory note about honesty addressed to the mutual friends. I did not shame Jonah or the woman. I asked people to decide from the evidence whether they wanted to be around someone who lied, and then to act like adults and own their choices. The note was careful. I explained why I was sharing the images, what I hoped it would accomplish, and that I would not engage in witch hunts. It felt like lighting a candle in a dark room. The response was not immediate. Some people apologized in whispers, others deleted comments, and a few sent me angry messages accusing me of stirring things up. But then, slowly, people began to rearrange themselves. A few who had complained to me in private came back with apologies and with offers to help with the studio. The woman who had been involved reached out quietly, and said she had not known he was seeing me and was ashamed. She asked to meet and talk. I could have lashed out, but instead I met her with a cup of coffee and a gentle honesty about how I felt. She was not the enemy, deception was. The small bouquet on his doorstep did more than poetry. It made him face the fact that someone he had been dishonest with had not simply disappeared. It made him realize that his little lies had consequences beyond his comfort. I pictured the way he folded the card and stared out his window, how the carnations might wilt in the vase because he never learned to care for them, the domestic metaphor of neglect. In the weeks that followed, Jonah stopped showing up at the places I frequented, and our mutual circle, which had been roped into a messy knot, untangled itself in a quieter, steadier way. I kept teaching. I kept arranging. I kept watering my plants on schedule. I stopped letting the idea of revenge define me and started letting the idea of self respect steer me instead. The consequences were poetic in a way I had not expected. I had not ruined him, and I had not become cruel. Instead, I had reclaimed the narrative and reasserted my worth. I had been rewarded not by humiliation for him, but by my own feeling of rightness. I was not the same person who had cried in the stockroom next to buckets of ribbon. I was someone who could hurt and still be generous, someone who could be private and still choose to speak. The twist, the part that always surprises people who expect a full burn, was that Jonah later reached out apologizing without theatrics. He said he had seen the truth reflected back to him and that it had hurt enough to change him. He sounded small and honest on the phone, and for the first time in months, I believed him without needing to forgive. I accepted his apology as a matter of fact and kept working. I learned that vengeance that is thoughtful and careful can be a teacher rather than a monster. I learned to choose closure that did not hollow me out. And above all, I learned that when your life is a garden, you water the things you want to keep and remove the weeds with steady hands, not with a scorched field.